Major support for these broadcasts is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, All Nation Renovation, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Chelsea Lighting, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Investors Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates, Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Corman Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, the Wickoff Group, Urban American, Ackman Ziff Real Estate, Eastern Consolidated, Goldman Properties, the Moynihan Group, Muss Development, RAL Development Services, the Spandrel Group, LLC, Triangle Equities.
So they call this section Long Island. It is a neighborhood that people really like living, visiting. People even go out to what they call the Hamptons. But there are things happening in Long Island. And each year I always like to have one or two shows talking about Long Island. And one day when my friends over here get the people in Long Island to have me on, it's going to even be better. So today I have four individuals who are going to talk about what's happening on Long Island. My guests include David Scrow, who is the president of Country View, the other Coughlin brother, Jim Coughlin, who is the principal at Tritech Development, Michael Pintello Jr., who is the president of Jobco. And last but not least, how do you have three developers without the man with the money, the man who looks after them, my good friend John T. Adams, who is the first senior vice president at commercial mortgages for New York Community Bank, the $41.2 billion small little savings bank. Since you are the executive producer of today's show, also for bringing the group together, is there money out there for these guys?
There is money. I mean, everyone in the lending business today, I think, is a bit more cautious with where they're putting their dollars out. Like we say on every show, when you have the bankers on, sponsorship definitely is a important factor in underwriting a good deal, whether it be a CRE deal or a multifamily deal. Demand definitely is something today that you need to be certain that there is demand. They're not building it and they will come. That philosophy is out the door. But for guests like we have here today, yeah, there is money to be had.
So here's the question. I mean, we have really a good group. I mean, a lot of your work has been in the multifamily.
That's correct.
Okay, that's the predominance, and you've done some great work because you've done workforce housing, which I think I want to explain in a little while. Mr. Coughlin over here has a number of variety of things besides being a developer. You also build for other people. I mean, it should be the Mather Hospital Group over here, with all the properties over there. But you have office buildings, you have developments, you have rental, and you have the combination of everything. The biggest problem that many people tell me, and I've seen it over the years, in worse than New York City, is getting things approved in Long Island. Why is it that way? I mean, you've gone through this recent project and you finally got community or whatever they call it out in Glen Cove for a project that really should be it and really doing well for the community, because it's going to take something that really didn't look great and work it out.
Boy, you know, Long Island historically has been difficult to develop, you know, going forward, I don't see it changing much. There is, I think the main reason is because Long Island has so many land use, has so many districts that control land use. It's not done at a county level. It's done at the village level. It's done at a township level. And there are multiple villages and townships in Nassau and Suffolk County, so you've got to go through quite a process to get through that local land use process. And many times it's controlled by small villages and the boards of those villages, and understandably, because of the small nature of a village you may be working in, the talent or the folks populating those boards don't necessarily have a lot of experience in the area of land use.
How long does it take to get something approved? Typically in Nassau or Suffolk.
In our job in the town of Smithtown, it took us 9.5 years. The problem on Long Island is that there's no property zone multiple family. You have to go for a change of zoning. And that's a very difficult process. And also, the problem in Suffolk County is the lack of sewers. And that process and the cost of that, you know, is definitely a factor. But nationally, 34% of people are living in rental housing. I think it's like 13% in Suffolk, 20% in Nassau. There's a need for rental housing. There's also a need for entry-level housing.
I think the combination of the need for rental housing in Long Island is enormous. You know, and you know, I remember, I think it was Avalon Bay I may have had on the show a couple years ago, and they've tried to get some projects, they have been able to accomplish them, but you know, you don't have the cities to really, you know, they don't allow it. And people can't afford houses, and that we were talking about that, about the affordable. How does a young person afford to buy a house in Nassau or Suffolk County?
Well, historically,
And typically the step before purchasing the house is living in a rental apartment. It's that first step to home ownership, and for many reasons, both Nassau and Suffolk County, as David just mentioned, as a percentage of the total housing stock is significantly below the national average, frankly, below Westchester County and other surrounding counties to the New York metropolitan area.
we're at about 17% rental housing on
But
Long
you know,
Island.
here's an interesting
Nationally, it's about
situation.
35%.
You know, one of the I mean, I happen to, NYCB is really good friends, and you know, one of their main businesses is they are the kings, literally, of the multifamily rental business. That's their specialty. And I would assume that if you had that opportunity to, since you know the rental business and how well it is, you would want to do that if there were opportunities in Nassau and Suffolk County.
Finding the money for rental construction is not an issue.
It's not an issue.
That's not a problem.
You have more
finding the
difficulties
approvals.
today, right? Getting the approvals, number one, from their viewpoint, is difficult. But once they get the approval, and if you have an area that you know the rental market will be absorbed in a relatively rapid pace, we would do that all day long.
Yeah, you know, here's another interesting thing about what's happening in Long Island. You know, many people have said when you have older parents, and you know, many of them who may have gone down to Florida or North Carolina or other places, when that parent is ill or really getting older in their time, you don't, even though you don't want to, as we would say, you don't want to schlep down there to visit. So what a lot of people are doing are bringing the parents back. And there is a need for assisted living, which is something that you've been involved with over here. But today, what's happening with assisted living in Long Island?
Well, you know, we had a presence from some of the national players, the Sunrises and others who came into the marketplace. There's some smaller local
It's the Bristol,
operators.
right?
Exactly. I think what's changed, and there was a point in time when continuing care retirement communities, which are frankly pretty popular in other parts of the country but are almost non-existent in New York State other than under a not-for-profit model. I think the process has evolved. things like insurance for long-term care services, et cetera, are available that may not have been available years ago. So folks are, in many instances, are choosing to live in their home and have attendants come to the home to care for them. So there are, that has evolved to the point where there are many products available. You don't necessarily have to take the step of going into an assisted or a nursing home or, the few CCRCs that are available.
What about the situation with the age-restricted communities, the 55 and older, which at one time was a large segment of the market? Are they coming back in Long Island now?
I think there's still a need for that smaller type unit, especially in Long Island, because if you have a condominium structure, the real estate taxes are low. And because they're attached, the utility costs are lower. Those are two big factors on housing. So there's a need. It's the right entry point that you have to hit in order to satisfy that housing. The higher up you go, people may have to sell their house, and that creates a problem. But if you keep it at the entry level, I think there's still a market.
And
How have
to
the
David's
approvals
point,
been for those? I mean, do you run into people opposing them because of historically they've been supported because they don't create kids. But now the school districts are getting no votes from the people that are in these communities when the budget comes around. So have you seen that experience?
Well, you have to, I think the problem is you have to make an argument that either way, whether it's 55 or not 55, these units are small and they don't generate school-age kids. And they're also, it's an entry point for people to buy these homes and then they buy other homes. So, and that's what's lacking, to get people in a house where they could then establish themselves in the community and then they move up to the move-up market. And that's kind of what's missing. Condos is the way to do it. We have to make that argument that these smaller units don't generate school-age kids and get around that 55 and older restriction that you have. Because in today's market, it's a little tough.
Yeah.
but they generate less taxes.
Yes.
Pardon me, they generate full taxes, but they generate less traffic and no children in the school district. So typically the municipalities like age restricted.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're working on and what you're working on today. I mean, the Glencoe Project, which I think is a fantastic. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It was a property that we had under ownership for the past 35 years. It was interesting. It was a downtown urban renewal project back in the 70s. It was populated by tenement buildings, basically. Ground floor, storefront, taxpayer type, retail with 3 stories of residences above. And back in the 70s, those tenements, the planning thinking at the time was we want that out of the downtowns, we want to bring more shoppers in, so let's convert those into retail. And interesting, the planning has come full circle. So we chased all the residences out of the downtowns, to just develop commercial and retail uses. And now we've come full circle. We've decided, and this is nationally, it's certainly happening on Long
I think
Island.
a good example is like Meisner Park in Florida. It's the perfect situation. It's retail, it's residential, it's rental and for sale.
City Place in West Palm Beach is
Right.
another good example. And essentially that's what we're trying to create. We had a 40-year-old, now ground floor, 1-story retail facility that was tired. It was a tired property. And we decided to bring the residences, bring some more apartments in the downtown setting to provide a ground floor retail with 4 stories of residences above. So we're bringing young people, it's a rental apartment project, we're bringing young people back into the heart of downtowns, walking distance to all the services they need, connectivity here to New York City.
How far is the railroad?
The railroad is about a 10-minute walk away, not far.
Which is great.
We have the bus line right in front of the property. We have connectivity also with a ferry service that the city of Glencoe is going to be starting with direct connection from the waterfront, high-speed ferry into Manhattan at Midtown.
That's fantastic. And what about you?
Well, in Patchogue, we originally got interested in Patchogue because we thought we had some enlightened self-interest for our office buildings where, young people, as you've been pointing out, have a tough time buying on Long Island, and we've lost 35% of our people between the ages of 25 and 35 over the past 15 years. So the companies in our office buildings didn't have anybody to fill the jobs and fill up the office buildings. So we started to look into the multifamily housing market. And Patchogue was the wealthiest town in Long Island, the wealthiest village in Long Island at the turn of the last century, 19th to the 20th century. and was a booming village. And the corner of Main and Main there, Ocean Avenue and Main Street, was occupied by Sweezy's, which was the sort of the anchor of downtown Patchogue, and was the place, even when I was a kid in Hauppauge, we'd go on Saturdays to go buy our Catholic school uniforms, whatever else you needed. But that, during the 70s and 80s, was sort of taken over, and all those shops were sort of pulled out and gone along Sunrise Highway with the big box movement. So the village really fell into, you know, a long period of decay. And the new mayor, he's not new anymore, but at the time he was a new mayor, Paul Pontieri, decided to buy the old Village Theater, probably about 7 or 8 years ago now. Invested like $1.2 million, started to pull in 300 acts a year. He attracted Pulte to come in and do an 85-unit project for workforce housing. Started to create, you know, a change in the pedestrian demographic downtown. That drove about 6 new restaurants to come into downtown Patchogue, and it's just started to feel a lot of momentum.
So now, what are your plans?
Our plans are we've acquired basically a village block. The old Sweezy's building, which has been vacant for 13 years, the Carnegie Library, which is back on Lake Street, the taxi stand, and the entire block of Havens Avenue. So we can create a U, and we've got a land swap with the village, where we can create basically a village block project that has 291 rental units, 36,000 square feet of retail, and about 17,000 square feet of office. So it's a mixed-use development. It should do an awful lot to revitalize downtown, which is, to our right, we've already got the Lace Mill building has been redeveloped. You've got Briarcliff College in there, a $20 million new YMCA gone on down there. And when we get this 500 new residents revitalizing downtown Patchogue, I think you're going to see a huge uptick in the values for those, the residents that are around it.
David, what are you working on?
Well, we just fully leased 90,000 square feet in Smithtown. And we have a New York Sports Club, 39,000 square feet, has a basketball court, spin area, swimming pool. Next to them, we have a safety swim school. I think they have 7 locations. That's something that people always need, lessons and so forth. We have a daycare center. We have a medical office space, a pediatric dentist. He has about 6,000 customers. So we built, his layout is almost like a submarine, and we did the interior alterations, and he won an award for it. But his company hired Disney to do all the, he's got fish everywhere, he's got sharks and everything, so.
Don't worry, the banker wouldn't finance it.
No, well,
he's not
I
into
sent him all the pictures and everything. He was okay
No,
with it.
give him a rental, give him something else.
We have DDI, it's a Development Disabilities Institute. They teach life skills for adults with disabilities. So it's a good mix. We have a bounce U in there for indoor play area for kids and other
What about, what about retail? How do you like
Just
retail?
for the record, we did do that job.
Oh. No, I knew you did the job, and I was talking about the doctor's office. I wasn't talking about, no, I knew you did the job, but I didn't know. But what about retail? I mean, one of the things, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I remember, since I'm a little older, I remember going to Hempstead when they had Abraham and Strauss. And that was, people used to go there. It was really Corvettes. And, there were these stores over there. And unfortunately, Hempstead is not there. But retail was always a big item, especially, you even go on near Westbury, Roosevelt Field and all the rest. Retail has been good in Long Island. But what type of retail do you like?
We like a variety of tenancy. Obviously, a lot of the lenders like the anchored supermarket centers, which we do as well. But we'll look at the local mom and pop strips, probably second in our portfolio to the multifamily, which is no comparison by way of number of or percentage of, is probably retail, whether it be in the boroughs or out on Long Island. So we're going to look for a diversified tenancy where you have staggering leases expiring at different times.
Right, but I'm thinking out loud, listening to Mike and to Jim's situation. I mean, on the retail, a perfect type of situation of would be a Trader Joe's. Or their cousin store, which is Aldi, or going into there. Because it's not, it could be a certain size, and it could take care of the community. And if they want, they'll go to King Cullen, or they'll go to Wallbaum's or Stop and Shop. for the large, but for the smaller situation, this is a perfect scenario over there.
It's
you know,
perfect scenario
It's
for
the
somebody
it's the
like an
perfect
uncle.
type of things, because I mean, if you go into New York City, they opened up whatever Trader Joe's is in New York, in Manhattan, you can't get into there. You know, people wait online with their wife's spouse or something. Stay online for me so I can make the number over there. But what about the office market? You have two major buildings, I know,
Yeah.
on 495.
The office market is had a very weak year in terms of volume. I mean, I think we've, according to JLL statistics, I think we've seen about 1.2 million of absorption, gross absorption for the year. I think last year, that's so far this year, through third quarter. Last year we did about 2.4 million. So we've got a lot of work to do in the fourth quarter if we're going to get anywhere near what we did last year, which wasn't a great year.
And now, what are office rents running on your properties?
In the central Suffolk, or Hauppauge market, you're in the high 20s. You get some concessions, but the effective rents have buoyed a little bit by the fact that the concessions have gone down. I mean, a couple of years ago, you'd see people offering a month for every year of a lease. And while the face rents haven't changed much, those concessions have come down a little bit. And the amount of tenant work that you have to put in to get somebody to move has gone down.
I mean, in the space that you released, what do you get in rent?
We're at 18 and 20. You know, for the daycare, we got higher. We got 23. It's more of a build out. It depends on the build out and so.
And in your properties, Mike?
Same mid-20s for Nassau County. You're looking at.
But isn't the biggest problem in Nassau County the real estate taxes? I mean, getting a $20.
It is.
I mean, you can get a rent, but the real estate taxes could be as much as the rent.
Well, the famous, the infamous quote: a Class A office building in Nassau County is going to pay approximately $8 a square foot in property tax, and that same exact building, literally over the Suffolk County line, I mean, immediately over the line, is paying approximately $4. That's a challenge for Nassau commercial office.
And the rents really don't reflect that at all. No.
And interestingly, as Jim just pointed out, the rents do not reflect that very much.
You know, we at the beginning of the show, I brought up the workforce housing, which you brought out. Explain to my viewers what Long Island has tried to do for the younger couples in the workforce housing.
Well, it's a huge problem. Like Jim mentioned, we're losing a lot of young people entry level. The Long Island Housing Partnership has been very active. We built two programs sponsored by them in the town of Brookhaven, and I mentioned also in the town of Smithtown. And there's a waiting list. And one of the, we're local developers. We're in the community. But it's a very rewarding thing when you're helping out your community and you see these people grab those keys and in the heyday when things were going so well. We kind of lost track of that. But they are just thrilled to get into the homes. They're a waiting list. The partnership.
Okay, I tell a cute story. In New York City, you're fortunate that there are lotteries, and certain people could get an affordable apartment. And they even had affordable condos. And one time, this woman told me, I love your show because I want an affordable apartment because you taught me how to learn the lottery. So is it similar? Is it a lottery?
Similar thing. Long Island Housing Partnership runs the lottery. They screen the applications. We're there screening the applications. They still have to meet the credit report guidelines. They still have to have employment history. They still have to qualify for the mortgages, and there's mortgages.
Okay, but those are for sales.
Those are for sales.
Right.
But what about
On the rental side, I mean, on my side job, I'm chairman of the board of Community Development Corporation of Long Island, and we manage about 3,500 vouchers, home housing vouchers, not home ownership vouchers, but housing vouchers for rentals. But we also have created some. We've brought in tax credit developers that we've partnered with, and the theory being that if we can go in and maybe get a little bit more of a favorable view from municipality in terms of getting a multifamily approval, and we bring in a tax credit developer who actually deliver units into that market. These are tough markets. We've got 94 units going up in Hempstead right now. We're trying to get approval, and Mark Lesko's been very supportive of about 170 units right in the intersection of 112 and 25 in Coram. And together with some of our for-profit partners on the tax credit side, we've got about 700 units put up in the past 10 years. But that's
and these apartments are tied into the area median income.
Absolutely.
There's a level of, and there'll be some for 40% of the area median income, 60%, 80%, and then maybe 150%, depending
Yeah, we don't
on the
go up
workforce
that. We
housing.
go below the 80.
Many of the municipalities are also starting to tie in affordability requirements for approvals. 10%, 20% of the total, whether it's condominium for sale or rental, has to be dedicated for affordable. So that will vary by community, but they're starting to build that into the approval process.
But don't you find that that's easier to get done than looking at a whole affordable job? I mean, unless there's some sort of subsidy, there's really nothing
Well,
in
the
it
tax
for
credit has to be
or
the
tax
subsidy.
credit.
Yeah.
There's nothing in it for the developer, I'm sure, at the
So-
very end.
So I got to ask you, you're the banker. When somebody comes to you and they say they'd like to build an affordable project, how do you look at it?
Favorably. I mean, David mentioned the job that the Long Island Housing Partnership's doing out on the island, out in Bayshore. We are funding that job. It's basically a home run. It's a lottery. There's, I'm sure, a list of people waiting to purchase a home, and they're moving along.
But you know what? How? Because I know the person. Why is a developer doing this? There's altruistic approaches, but the developer is going to make some money on the deal.
There's,
isn't it?
there's guaranteed sales. You don't
Right.
have to worry about
Zero market
marketing,
risk.
selling, and you could build it quickly. There's not many upgrades and options. So
And you're
everything
getting a
is
fee,
uniform.
right? You're getting you
Absolutely.
build in a fee. I mean, there is profit in it, but you know,
Absolutely.
to build a whole affordable rental job where you're limited on the income, that you unless there's a grant or a voucher system, I can see
Suffolk
where it's
County had a
difficult.
pretty aggressive program for a while. We did a job with them through CDC out in Mattituck where we did 28 cottages and we were able to get a significant amount per unit.
You know, you bring up an interesting thing, Mattituck and other. I mean, Nassau County, there's not much land left. Parts of Suffolk County, there's not. But there is, you know, in Calverton or certain parts of Suffolk County, land to be developed. You know,
But you know, you look at Long Island and what we have. You mentioned retail before, and the affordability issue. I mean, we have a lot of obsolete stock of buildings in our downtowns, near our train stations. You know, these transit-oriented developments certainly seem to me to be the most transformative for the island. And I'd rather see that type of transformation than going out and putting up 400 units on a farm. I mean,
but what about, like, for example, I think may have been on one of your websites, we were talking about Long Beach, which has had a history of ups and downs and ups and downs. And you know, right now they think it's up, but you know, who knows, because the hotel was a down, you know, in Long Beach. But
I don't know specifically about Long Beach, but if you look at the island, Nassau and Suffolk is 2.8 million people. And last year, I think we had, for building permits, a little less than 1,500. That is ridiculously low. There is an underpinning of demand that is out there. It's just a question of surviving the approval process and getting our permits.
And as you mentioned, David, the sewers. I mean,
the sewers
in town of Brookhaven, we started in 1990. We started town of Brookhaven Sewer District number 1. Took about 9 years to get built. We just got approval and finishing up construction on town of Brookhaven Sewer District number 2, which we started about 11 years ago.
See what it is? It's like the Second Avenue subway. It only takes 30 years, and you don't want to go to Second Avenue now because it's construction.
Right.
But I hope that in 2012, all of you will come back and we can continue this discussion on what's happening in Long Island, because I think we've got a really good discussion. And one day you're going to help me get this on in Long Island also. I'd like to thank David Scrow, Jim Coughlin, Michael Pantillo, and last but never least, John T. Adams. See you next week.